Oh, here it's good.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, and welcome to the Village of Mamanic Board of Trustees meeting for February 14th, 2022. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you who are home with your loved ones, and I hope if you're home with your loved ones, you're actually not watching this. I need a motion to open up this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of opening the meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have 3 ayes. Adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Somebody got a second? I can't hear it. You gotta articulate the recording.
We're having trouble with the computer here, so it keeps going on and off and stopping. So the answer is yes.
Okay, you're seconding it then. Or you call the roll.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
DeFour, Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Vic, I don't know what's going on. I see your mouth move, but we can't hear you, just so you know. Okay, first item on the agenda is communication to the board. 3 up. Let's go with Doreen first. Hello, Ms. Roney.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I have 3 things that I wanted to point out. One is the USGS river gauges. I know you received a memo, not you, but the Board of Trustees received a memo from Harbor Coastal Zone after we unanimously voted in 2017 to fund and get the stream gauges back up and running. I'm pleased to see that the backup that Trustee Natchez provided and took the initiative on, and he contacted and received correspondence back from Gary Wall. There was a provided update of where Harbor Coastal Zone left off. What Gary Wall and is posted on your agenda stated in his email was that the final cost is contingent on site reconnaissance, which they'd initiate as soon as they hear if there's a decent likelihood of this going forward. Is there anyone on this board that believes the village is not in need of an early network system that warns the public and first responders about impending flooding? Is there any reason not to ask USGS to do reconnaissance for these 3 sites? You don't have to answer that, but you know, this has been hanging in the wings since 2017. And you know, being proactive rather than reactive is always a good goal. The second thing I'd like to bring up is an issue of FOIL requests. Back in October, when there was a public hearing on the new tree law, I did a FOIL request on October 1st, but I received information back from the FOIL records officer that due to staff workload and the number of FOIL requests, I wouldn't get a response to my FOIL on or before January 25th, 2022. I specifically requested the backup records necessary for consistency and seeker determinations on that law. I wish to participate, however, not having these records, it stopped me. So 4 months later, on January 25th, I received a certified response from the deputy village clerk that after a diligent search, there are no records supporting that your board considered consistency and seeker when you adopted the tree law. If that's not bad enough, while I was checking to see if there was any response, I noticed that the Journal News did a FOIL request on December 29th and received a response on the 21st of January. That was less than 20 days. I'd really appreciate if maybe the board can inquire and provide me with an answer on why one FOIL request, which was submitted 2 or 3 months later than mine, was answered in 17 workdays, while mine, submitted in October, had not yet been responded to. Is that possible? No answer? There's something funny going on with FOIL. I just would like to know how that happens. Last I spoke at your meeting, I talked about the LWRP and how the Board of Trustees is the lead agency for our village's LWRP's implementation. There are 2 things I'd like to point out that are really, really important. As lead agency of our LWRP, that Board of Trustees at the time and yours gives assurance to both New York State and federal government that you'll enforce consistency provisions in our local, state, and federal laws. And the Board of Trustees needs to provide a consistency local law that's consistent with our LWRP. To be clear, this covers a review procedure that fulfills 2 very basic management structure requirements, which are found on page 99 of our LWRP. One is establishing a review procedure whereby local permitting authorities, primarily the Board of Trustees, the Board of Appeals, the Planning Board, and the building inspector, takes into consideration and makes determinations regarding the consistency of proposed actions with the policies of the LWRP. Before these determinations being made by the permitting authorities, proposed actions in the coastal zone will be referred to the Coastal Zone Management Commission for its review and comment. And this comment will be considered by the permitting authorities when making determinations of consistency. The second law is the local seeker law, which requires that local actions have to be consistent to the maximum extent practical with policies of this program. In this way, the coastal management policies contained herein will receive maximum consideration prior to the granting of permits. Given this management structure cited and these requirements in state and federal consistency law, consistency determinations are required prior to considering an action under seeker. Unfortunately, the village current consistency law is way out of compliance with state and federal law by requiring seeker determinations prior to consistency.
Okay, Ms. Roney, thank you for your comments.
I'm not finished, and don't I have
No,
5
your time is well up. Thank you very much for your comments.
Really, I have 3 minutes.
Ms.
and
Van Eyck.
50
Ms.
seconds.
Van Eyck goes next.
Mayor,
Hmm.
she's a farmer, she's trying
That's
to
fine,
communicate
but-
certain things. I think to give her,
I'm sorry, but there are rules for a reason. She's way over 5 minutes, and you've taken me down this
she's
garden
been trying
path
to cover
before.
many topics. We appreciate her information is always useful, even if you
Limit her
haven't been
topics to 5
responding.
minutes. Everybody's comments are important.
I
Whether
know
you're
she was trying to wrap up.
when you're
Let her finish.
whether you're a former trustee, a former mayor, or just a former board member.
I was
Every-
asking your
rules apply to
indulgence to let her
everybody equally.
finish.
The answer is no, Victor.
Okay, don't let
Ms.
her
Van Eyck
finish.
is
It
next.
could be a couple seconds. It's okay. You're the boss.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Ms. Van Eyck is
Good
next.
boss. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to read this so I don't skip anything. For the record, my name is Gina Von Eyck. I'm a lifelong resident of the village, and I'm going to go back in time to connect the pieces to today. Until Storm Ida, I had never been a flood victim. That night I watched as a wall of water came from Station Plaza right over the top of the Mamanic River towards my house. My husband was almost pulled out of the driveway by the floodwaters that reeked of oil, gasoline, and sewage. The rest of the night, I listened to screams for help from men in Columbus Park while waiting for the waters to recede the tide, but they didn't. Until now, I avoided speaking with this board because I had been writing to you for well over a year about the dangers of the storage containers in the floodway, and I was mocked. My concerns were ignored, and your oath to uphold the village code seemed inconvenient. Now it's time to step up. 8 days after Ida, I walked past a crane on Anita Lane lifting a huge metal container out of the river. It was resting horizontally in front of both channels of the bridge. This was one of 2 unanchored containers that were permitted in the regulatory floodway in the Van Rance parking lot that were propelled down the river by raging waters. The other container lodged vertically in the channel of the Station Plaza Bridge. Even when unobstructed, these are the bridges the Army Corps identifies as being responsible for the back flooding in the village. For 1 year, I wrote all of you that these were dangerous and in violation of code, and Ida proved me right, very sadly. When I questioned the contribution of these containers being lodged in the bridges that they made to the flood height and the back flooding, Mayor Murphy dismissively wrote, so the container levitated itself into the river before the flood. I suppose resident safety isn't high on the priority list. In addition, the village manager dismissed me in the code when I emailed my concern that a major nor'easter was coming at us and the Van Rance lot could flood. He actually sent an email to the village, not to me, addressing my concern stating, and I quote, "The village Mamanic fire inspector and building inspector have been involved every step of the way and following the code," which they weren't. "We just didn't tell Gina. I must have forgot!" exclamation point. Mr. Barbario, the fire inspector and the building inspector are required to be familiar with and enforce our code. Are we, the residents, expected to believe that they aren't aware of it? When the containers were fished out of the river, they were placed right back in the floodway, unanchored. A larger storage container, trailers, toilets, tables for the Fuller Center were added to the floodway in the Jefferson Avenue lot in further violation. Federal, state, and local laws require that our regulated floodways to be free of development. This is so seriously considered a danger that our chapter 186 provides that any person who violates this article or fails to comply with any of its requirements shall, upon conviction, be fined no more than $250 or imprisoned for not more than 15 days for each violation, each day of the violation. Will any of the village officials be disciplined or penalized for these egregious violations? Thank God the DEC and the GOS takes our safety and the floodplain code seriously, but that's not the end of my story. It gets much worse. I just became aware that Mr. Barbario filed a discrimination complaint against this village. His EEOC complaint on the village website for the whole world to see bizarrely names me, a resident, as a party who was colluding to harass him, a public official, for criticizing his job performance during Ida. Not only has Mr. Barbario glibly mocked me in emails, he's also incapable of receiving professional criticism or listening to valid concerns. For someone who represents himself on LinkedIn as a professional municipal manager and operations leader with a litany of degrees and certifications, ignorance of the floodplain statutes is inexcusable. In 2021, the taxpayers paid him $199,777 in exchange for his expertise and professionalism, according to See Through New York, that any person could look at. I find it especially disconcerting and frightening when a public officer in a position of power, to whom all the departments answer, including the police department, mentally perceives that questioning his job performance is a personal harassment. I blame this board for creating such a hostile environment for residents, and I expect that it is your job to stand up and protect residents like me from further abuses of power. That's what I have to say. And I think it's disgraceful that I called you for a year and it was ignored, and those darn things went down the river and they added to the backflooding to this village. Take the responsibility for the behavior of these officials. There's my 5 minutes.
Thank you. The next up is Glenn Tippett. Do you have a popular Mr. Tippett? Glenn?
Good evening. First of all, wish each and every one of you a happy Valentine's Day. It's a great day to reach out to your loved ones most near and far, and just, a reminder of how special they are to you. Number one, we have spring coming up. We have First Amendment auditors, and I'd just like to let village officials and village residents know about the legality of photographing in public.
Oh.
Any American citizen can take a camera, cell phone, device, and they are allowed to either take pictures or photograph anywhere they wish in public. The only restrictions would be a changing room, a bathroom, or in a public building, something that is restricted by sign. I can't go into an unauthorized area in Village Hall. I am certainly allowed in the foyer. I can't go into a restricted area in the library, otherwise I could go through the library. I can go into any public park I want. I can photograph anybody I want. I can take pictures of anybody I want. Anywhere in the park, there is absolutely no restrictions. I can't get within 5 feet of somebody and get into somebody's face. That would be intrusion of privacy. Otherwise, public photography is perfectly legal. If you are nervous about the person doing photography, that's fine. You are perfectly allowed to call the police. The only thing the police can do is come down, confront, have a conversation with the photographer. If the photographer does not wish to answer a question by the police and decides not to say a word to him, there is nothing the police officer can do. If the police officer comes down, he said, I'm taking photography in public, it's perfectly my right. The police officer goes, well, I'd like to identify you. Kick rocks. Police officer cannot force anybody to identify themselves when they are in a legally lawful pursuit according to the US Constitution. They can turn around and cop speak and say, oh, people are feeling uncomfortable. I wish you wouldn't take pictures here or there or something. That's all they can do. It is not illegal to take pictures in public anywhere in the village. It doesn't matter if it's Mamaroneck Avenue. It doesn't matter if it's a park. You can't go on private ground. You can't go on the school grounds without permission. I can't go into Sal's Pizza and do it because that's a private residence. But as for photographing in public, it's perfectly legal. And beyond that, I can photograph in public any place my eyes can see. So even though I'm in public, if I want to stand on the sidewalk and point to Sal's Pizzeria to the guy making the pizzas, that is perfectly legal. And there's not a state, county, local, or any agency within the village that can change that. The only way that could be changed, Congress, US Constitution. Number two, I've asked this about 3 or 4 times. I'm going to make this as simple as possible. I would like to see a resolution that anybody within the floodplain that has a single family house and wishes to raise the house out of the floodplain, it can get a variance to match the amount of feet that they're raising the house. If I wish to raise my house 7 feet out of the floodplain, I should be able to gain 7 feet of height. Therefore, I am not losing 2 floors, I am losing 1 floor. If I raise my house 15 feet, I should be able to do. That would be the maximum. We will let you move your house up to 15 feet out of the flood zone.
Zero.
You have to keep your original footprint. And if you lower the house, you lose the variance you had when you were able to raise the house.
Thank you, Glenn.
Therefore, the only effect that you're having is able to get people out of the flood zone and still own a 2-family house as opposed to a 1-family house.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for your input tonight. Next item on the agenda is public hearing. Public hearing on PLLK 2021, prohibiting smoking of any substance in Village of Mamaroneck Parks. I need a motion to open
So moved.
Second.
or you call.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
yes,
Lucas,
Yes.
Tofor. Trustee Tofor,
Yes.
Victor, we can't hear you.
Mayor Murphy,
Aye. You gotta find a way.
Maybe call in.
Okay, this has been in front of the board before. This prohibits smoking of any substance in Village of Mamaroneck Parks. Just to be clear, smoking tobacco was always prohibited in Village of Mamaroneck Parks. There was no, the code at the time talked about tobacco. It didn't talk about any other products, because I'm sure at the time, the reason for that was marijuana was illegal in any form and to be possessed and to be smoked. So it just seemed redundant to prohibit smoking in village parks, but now the smoking of marijuana is legal. And that's not up for debate tonight. That's New York State law. So what we're doing tonight is we are prohibiting smoking of any subject, including cannabis, which is marijuana, pot, Mary Jane, weed, whatever you kids call it today. In any Village of Mamaroneck Park. Anyone from the public? Mr. Tippett, you want to say something? Well, all right, go ahead, Glenn.
Remember, Tom, it takes them a minute for them to unmute me. Okay. You want to pass this law, a couple of things. Number one, a lot of signage has to be put out there. Harbor Island, you simply don't go into Harbor Island through the front entrance. You enter Harbor Island all around the basin. People can walk off the sidewalk into Harbor Island. Number two, does that include the sidewalk adjacent to Harbor Island? That doesn't include any sidewalks to Columbus Park. Doesn't include the parking lot over by the train station. Exactly where do you consider the park beginning, and how are you going to have the signage? Three, as policy, you should speak to the police department and basically make this like most of the other laws that you have that nobody enforces them anyway, and simply have it as an encounter. You're smoking, please put your device out. Put your device out, you're done. You're done. I don't need your identification. You don't want to turn it into an excuse for Terry stops. 4, the bottom section of this law has to do with disposing of butts and whatever garbage may be, creative refuge may be created. It says in designated receptacles only. I didn't know that the Village of Mamaroneck had any dedicated receptacle to dispose of any cigarette butt or anything else. You could be, you use the public receptacle, make sure that it's out completely, that it doesn't cause a fire. But this states designated receptacle, and I'm not sure where we have any designated receptacle just to deal with cigarette butts and such items in the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. The bodies.
Hey, good evening.
This is James. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of Glenn. Pretty much Scarsdale adopted this, and they also, no parks, no smoking of any kind, but it's also on the sidewalks owned by the village, located in any village area, any of the parks, because this way you could just walk outside the park and you're able to smoke. So it makes no sense to just say parks, recreation, down the harbor. Glenn is right. You can walk on any of the sidewalks into the park, but also our village. I'm sure we're going to continue with the outdoor dining, and any smoke, especially marijuana, the stench of it alone, shouldn't be allowed. That's just an opinion, but that's what Scarsdale adopted. I think it would be a good idea. They also created it where they don't want it in their streets, on the sidewalks, because it's the same situation. So it's just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Have a good evening. Mr. O'Connor? Tim,
Hey,
you're on.
Mayor.
Oh,
Yeah, this is Tim O'Connor. Yeah, just unmuted. I emailed the village board a little while ago, and so I'm not sure if you received it or not, the email, but I'd like to read it at this point.
Go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see here. February 14th, 2022, Mayor Tom Murphy in the Village of Mamanic Board of Trustees. In regarding to tonight's public hearing regarding PLK 2021, smoking prohibited in village parks, we must expand the village law to include banning of all smoking products on our public sidewalks, directly in front of our public parks, school buildings, public buildings, houses of worship, business district, recreation spaces, including fields, parks, and playgrounds, as well as public streets and sidewalks within the village. The obvious is to protect the health and welfare of all village residents and visitors. No exceptions. The Village Board of Trustees must take a strong stance in providing laws that support the residents in a positive way and to continue to improve our quality of life. No smoking of any form in any public area of the village should be the gold standard within the Village of Mamaroneck. Public outdoor spaces should remain open and accessible to all village residents. Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees need to take advantage of fostering the well-being of our residents, health, safety, and welfare of all village residents and visitors. Furthermore, we must keep the quality of life and safety for all our standards as a first priority. This cannot be overlooked or compromised. I appreciate your time, Mr. Mayor and the board. Take some consideration of what we're saying here as as village residents. It's important of this law, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Mrs. Abadi, Laura Abadi, can you let her speak? Go back to the Abadis and
I'm here.
the better half.
Hi.
It's Laura Body. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Hi, Laura, thank you.
I'm mirroring what everybody else is saying, but I do have a couple of questions. I think for the benefit of having to piecemeal and add on or subtract, mirroring Scarsdale would be a very good idea, because we are not including the sidewalks that are directly butted up against parks, especially within the Washingtonville area. If you're in Armandinundio Park and an officer comes to enforce you smoking cannabis, and that person walks out of Armandinundio Park 6 inches, they're on the sidewalk. So we're serving no purpose, and we're just moving somebody straight across onto the sidewalk. So it would be good to possibly consider 100 feet from any public area, or mirroring what Scarsdale's doing to help streamline and keep everything intact, because you don't want somebody smoking cannabis in front of Bellows when they're picking up their children, because it's a public sidewalk and you can smoke pot. on that sidewalk. It's something to gravely consider before we keep moving through this law. But this law is greatly appreciated to include lit or unlit, as I'm reading in the law, but it doesn't include what the fine would be and how we're going to impose that fine.
I think that's in another section of the law. But I'm not sure. But
I didn't see it in this law. That's why I came tonight to ask that question, because when you read the Scarza law, it gives you the amount in 60 days. But for us, how are we going to impose that? And better yet, the same situation. If you're in the baseball field on Post Road and you're watching a child's game and then you move off the grass onto the sidewalk, you're still in the same area smoking cannabis. So we're kind of just pushing it away 6 inches out of the public park, but right onto the sidewalk in front of the public park.
Okay.
So it's just something that to consider as a whole across the whole village. And what Tim's saying, what my husband is saying, what Mr. Tippett is saying, and what I'm sure, the whole entire village who has the same thought process, who didn't have the opportunity to possibly send an email or to get online this evening. It's something to really consider, because if we're going to do it, let's do it once and let's do it right, instead of having to just keep going back to the chopping block. Put this to bed at some point and figure it out. I mean, maybe you don't want to adopt every single thing that Scarsdale has, but maybe it's something that we need to consider to help be equitable. I don't know if anybody agrees. It's kind of hard to do this via Zoom because we don't get the opportunity to have banter back and forth and have a conversation. I mean, I can't wait for the meetings to go back live so we could actually have real conversations about real things that we need to get done. But I mean, this is something that I feel strongly about, because I have my front porch is right on the sidewalk. And if I'm sitting on my front porch and there's 6 people on my sidewalk smoking cannabis, it affects me. And it affects my quality of life. So me times 35 or maybe 60 people that feel the same way, it's something to consider on your public sidewalk or your public street that you own as a village.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a happy Valentine's Day, both of you.
You too.
Anybody on the board have any questions or concerns? Want to speak to the issue?
Well, I would say that I agree with Laura Abadi that dealing with this piecemeal doesn't solve anything, because it's a code that is not enforced already, and we're going to add another thing to it. And if it makes everybody feel better, that's fine. But I would like to see a review of the actual behavior we're trying to prohibit, and not just a bunch of regulations. Because right now in the parks, at least at Columbus Park, you've got a proliferation of signs. I mean, I think it's sign pollution, and you can see any one of those signs that behind the signs, you will always see at least one prohibited activity happening in the park. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that people are already not paying attention. I'm not suggesting that we come in like the Gestapo and start enforcing it, but we should adjust it to address the behavior we want to control. We don't want cannabis smoking. We don't want alcoholic beverages. We don't want dog droppings. We don't want littering. Those things. But if you want to add it. I don't think it's going to change anything.
Well, I think, in my view,
Yeah.
but part of the reason you have stuff like this on the books, and it's not always quantifiable, because there isn't tickets written a lot of times, because if an officer or a park ranger goes in the park and they see somebody, let's just say prior, smoking a cigarette, they'll go, hey, you can't smoke it.
Yeah.
And if the guy puts the cigarette out and doesn't give him a hard time, that's the end of the story.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, if I don't mean to interrupt, Mayor, but I didn't foil anything. I just asked Judge Gallagher, have you ever seen a ticket for smoking in the park? He goes, never in my whole career here.
Right, but that goes to my point.
Yeah.
That a lot of time being able to enforce the law gives you the authority to at least say put the cigarette out.
Well, okay, I don't think it's good government. If you want to do it,
No, I understand you. I'm just trying to give you my point of view.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you.
Anybody else on the board?
Yeah, I mean, I think, with with the, using the logic that it's not enforced, well, then we don't need speed limits. I mean, obviously not everyone gets caught speeding, but we've lowered the speed limit to try and make the streets safer. It's one tool in the toolbox to try and do it. And I think to Laura's point, the penalties are at 268 in the bottom of the code. In the code, all that's changing, all we're doing now is taking the prohibition on cigarette smoking and adding marijuana to it. We're not changing any other aspect of the law.
Yeah.
So the points that that have been made about, maybe you shouldn't be able to smoke anything right outside of a park, that might be something to consider too. But this is a very narrowly focused law that just allows us to treat marijuana the same way we're already treating cigarettes. And there is a penalty. So, I'm in support of this law. If there wants to be a more holistic review to expand outside the perimeter of the park, that's a good point. Some states have banned, Western states don't allow smoking outside at all. New York State didn't make that choice. So people can smoke outside, can smoke marijuana outside. You can't do that in Colorado. So different states had different approaches. And, maybe we could cut a wider swath, but all we're doing now is addressing marijuana in parks the way we've already addressed cigarettes.
Any other board member?
There's someone else from the public, and then maybe I come back.
Oh, Miss Yiza Reed. I didn't see her, the Leona. Lilani. Hello, Lonnie.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. I just want to agree with, I've been going over what's been said with my husband, and we just believe that, there's a lot of gray areas with the law, and like similar to what Ms. Abadi was saying, and as well as Lou, is just if it can be really combed through, and just hoping that in the future that these laws are not going to target certain communities. That's my question. Like, I hope that that's not what is going on here, that you're creating laws to target certain communities. So yes, I'm not for, like, I care about people's health, and I believe that, there should be certain spaces, time and place for everything. But if we're going to be ticketing and then people being fined, I think the law needs to be a little bit more clear. And that's all I have to say. Y'all have a blessed evening.
I can just tell you, Ms. Reed, from my own point of view, there is no intention to target any community that I know. It was just the genesis of this was we have already prohibited the smoking of cigarettes. It seemed incongruous to then allow the smoking of marijuana in the park. So that, to me, that was the logic behind this. But I could tell you that we will watch how it's enforced, and if it is enforced in a way that's discriminatory, it would be our duty to act upon that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody from the board?
Oh, I
think Victor wanted to speak.
Yeah, I got it then. Thanks.
I'm not opposed to continuing the work, but I think we've reached a point where we have a clear law that has been questioned whether it does what it's supposed to do, and I think it does. So I think we should move forward.
may I
Yeah, sure.
one of the signs at Columbus Park says no organized ball playing on the grass. And although that's what it says, that's not what it means. And I think we all know what we're talking about. And that's the fear I think you heard from Ms. Yiza Reed there. That's all I want to say.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
You know we are talking about
Oh, Dan wants to talk.
Dan, go ahead.
why not think that you would talk?
I think the comments that have been made by the members of the public are very meaningful, but they're very hard to tweak, particularly at this point in time, if you say not, let's say 100 feet away from the park, in some parks that would go into residential buildings and apartment buildings and multifamily buildings. So I think it gets to be a question of trying to define what it is that we want to do. At the moment, it talks about in the parks, which I think is important. And I think that's the first step. I think we may want to go back and revisit if we want to tweak it further. And I think we need to see how it goes. But if you want to tweak it further, then you have to be very careful that we don't get into the law of unintended consequences of having a prohibition where we can't prohibit. For instance, Florence Park, it's lined by, all around by a fence and houses on the other side. So if you said you'd had to be, even 50 feet away from the park, you would be in the middle of somebody's house. So it would be from the entrance of the park. But if you say the entrance to the park, then at Harbor Island, I think we commonly refer to the entrance as, at the end of Mamanic Avenue. That may or may not be the entrance. I think those are types of things that we're not going to solve tonight. But I do agree with Lou. These are types of things that probably should be addressed. And I agree with you, Lou. Signage needs to be meaningful, not just being put up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I need a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Augustino just stepped out of the room for a second. So I will call the roll. How do we usually do this? Trustee Young,
No.
Trustee Natchez,
Yes.
Trustee Lucas,
Yes.
Trustee Tofor,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. So
Mayor Murphy, I'm happy to call the roll if you need.
you're a day late and a dollar short.
Well, I didn't want to cut you off, but for the adoption.
For the adoption, you can call a roll. No, that was just the adoption. No, that was just to close the meeting, right?
Close the meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
I should
That's all right.
change my vote to yes on
All
that.
right, everybody, the unanimous vote to close the meeting. Now I need a motion to adopt the law.
So moved.
Second.
No, you can't make the motion. You're not gonna vote for it. You shouldn't make the motion. You wanna make a motion?
No.
All right. Let's start this over. I need a motion to approve the law.
So moved.
I'll second. Sally, please call a roll.
Trustee Young,
No.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Sephora,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes. Okay, thank you all.
So I guess to move it along, I forgot what we were doing.
Okay. Takes time. Item 2A. We're almost at the agenda. Is order to bills. And the first is resolution authorizing amendment for Hurricane Ida overtime. This is taking $48,707 out of appropriated fund balance and putting it into the line Ida storm recovery overtime. And I'm sure we made this line so it would be easier to get reimbursed from FEMA. And that 48,707 to Ida storm recovery. Any questions or concerns? I need a motion.
So move.
Second.
Sally,
Trustee Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Sephora,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
aye. Budget resolution 2B. This is to fund central data processing contract services. So it's taking $41,000 out of contingent and putting it into central data processing service. Jerry, you want to talk about this for a minute?
Mayor, I'm trying to get Novus to come up because I have an electronic agenda.
but maybe Dan can. It's just slow loading up right now.
Sure. Yeah, there are a couple of items that we needed to purchase for the Information Technology Department, including some licenses from Dell to establish the village email accounts for the board, members of the boards and commissions, and backup and recovery software for a 3-year period for VEEAM backup and recovery software. So I think that's the backup and recovery software that we use in case there's a catastrophic failure in our computer system, so we can maintain our data and recover.
Thank you. I need a motion to move that from the contingent to the central data processing.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Dan.
just a question, if I may. Does any of this have to do with moving forward on Municity?
It does not.
Okay, can you anybody give us an update of where we are on that for a timeline and a schedule?
Sure. Do I do that, Jerry?
No, look, send us an email on that. Let's move ahead with the agenda.
We will. We'll send you an email tomorrow. No problem.
Thanks.
So I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Or we call roll.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes,
Lucas,
yes,
Tefor,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Abstract of manual vouchers tonight is $9,065.25. Questions or concerns? I hear none. Need a motion to approve the manual?
So moved.
so moved. Second,
Okay, Augie, please.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
yes,
Lucas,
yes,
Tefor. Trustee Tefor,
Yes.
Oh, here you
Mayor
go.
Murphy.
Aye. Okay. Abstract of audited vouchers, $1,992,897.01. Questions or concerns from the board?
I have a question on page 13, first item. Ben King of New York, Inc.
Get to it.
What are we doing monthly on that?
Danny King, they clean our offices.
Okay,
Yep. That's Johnny King.
Any other questions? I have a question. On page 9.
Yep.
Litigation from Abraham's Fensterman and Fensterman. I just want to point out, we have McCrory at Flagler, costing the village $4,650. Lawsuits from McCrory Teagert, lawsuits from Teagert. And I just want to point out, because I get this question a lot, the Goldstein litigation, that is not the village paying Ms. Goldstein's costs, as we did during her hearing. That is the village defending itself from litigation from Ms. Goldstein. So I just want to point them out before I get another email. Anybody have, oh, Glenn has his hand up. Mr. Tippett.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on the revenues coming into the village. Under Department 0261, we have fines and forfeitures. I see that we're over approximately 800,000. I did a little checking. It seems most of it obviously came after August 29th. Did we have $800,000 worth of insurance recoveries against Ida damage? And if we recovered the money through insurance, does that have to be minus from what we spent to what we put in for reimbursement for FEMA?
Is this on the order of vouchers that we're talking about?
No.
Well, the reports are attached to the vouchers. You have the vouchers and you have the
I know
revenue.
that, but
and
we're
the
talking about
exact- There's no other
we're talking
category.
about approving we're talking about approving the order of bills, but it's fine if anybody knows the answer.
They can
Okay.
get back to me during the week. And the other one is we received a $1.6 million from CHIPS. Is there any program currently that we're doing that's attached to? Thank you.
CHIPS is the former stuff that we did 2 years ago.
Okay. So this is to pay for former work, and then we have 448 still left in our balance with CHIPS that we could do for further work.
Correct.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Exactly.
I need a motion to approve the abstract of voting vouchers.
So moved.
Second,
Augie,
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
aye. No old business. 4A, certificate of unpaid taxes for fiscal year 2021. This allows us to put liens out on property taxes. Is that right, Augie?
That's correct, Mayor. It's also reconciliation, total collection of taxes to date in comparison to what's logged into the village register.
And I applaud you on this, Augie, because when I was with the town, they did foreclosures, and it was a much more messier way to get your money back. And this works much better. Any questions or concerns?
Nope.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Augie, please.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. The next is a donation of a bench at Harbor Island Park from the Friends of Eddie, are desirous of donating a bench and plaque to the Village of Mamaroneck to be placed at Harbor Island Park in memory of Eddie Piacente, a longtime Village of Mamaroneck resident and just an all-around good guy. So that the donation in total is $2,226.50. And we thank the Friends of Eddie for their generous gift. I'll make that motion.
Second,
Augie,
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
aye. The next item on the agenda is scheduling budget meetings and hearings. We added to this agenda February 28th, 4 p.m. For 1 hour to talk about aspirational goals of the board in the budget. And we also went to March 30th, Wednesday, instead of March 31st, Wednesday, March 30th, Wednesday. And we're talking about revenues and expenses on March 30th. And we're moving the Harbor Master and the Parks and Recs to April 12th, 2022. And we'll also talk about other items that need to be wrapped up in that meeting. And I think that those were the amendments that we made at the work session.
One more, that we will be taping, we'll
Right.
be keeping this in
Taping it on
Zoom.
Zoom.
Yeah.
But we might be back in the classroom at that time too, so. we'll have
That's
to-
a separate issue.
I know it's a separate.
We
issue.
will make it available for residents. That's the possible.
I understand. I'm just pointing out that we might be back in the classroom. I'll make that motion.
Second,
Augustino?
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
the four,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
4D, resolution accepting a mural from Mamanic High School. Just a quick update on this. The Village of Mamanic Historical Society is looking to save 8 murals that were made 1940 in the high school, depicting scenes from James Fenimore Cooper's classic American novels. They're going to be removed because the The high school is building a STEM facility, which is much needed, but the murals are a part of our history. And this historical society is trying to save them. They're trying to raise $150,000. Hopefully, if someone's watching and they value history and they value the Village of Mamaroneck history, they can help the Historical Society out. The Village of Mamaroneck has offered to take one mural, should this come to fruition, and should the space be needed, we would house the mural in the Village of Mamaroneck courtroom. So please get in contact with the Village of Mamaroneck Historical Society. They have a Facebook page, and I think they have a website that you can contact them. Even if this doesn't come to fruition, you should get in touch with our local history. They do a great job of telling the story of Mamanic. So I will make the motion that we accept the mural if it comes to fruition to be housed in the courtroom.
Second,
Augustino. Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes,
the four,
Yes,
Mayor Murphy.
All right. Resolution, I'm sorry, item 4E is a resolution authorizing the sale of a surplus old vehicle. And the vehicle tonight is a Chevy Suburban with 123,000 miles on it. It's a 2005. So we will auction that as surplus property. Any questions or concerns? Need a motion?
So moved.
second,
Call the roll, please.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
yes,
the four,
yes,
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Issuance of an RFP, this is item, I'm sorry, 4F, issuance of an RFP for design services for window replacement of a building listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Any questions or concerns? Yeah, my only concern, and I'm going to vote for this, my concern is that, you know, we're paying twice what it would cost if it wasn't on the National Register of Historic Places, but it needs to be done. And it just, it's a lot of money. It's an extra $80,000 that we're paying for this. But it is what it is. So I need a motion.
So moved.
second,
Augustino.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
yes,
the four,
Victor?
Victor, you have to answer. You have to unmute.
yes,
Mayor
Yep.
Murphy.
Aye. Item 4G, resolution authorization to access control system and equipment for the Village of Mamaroneck Police Department facilities located at 169 Mount Pleasant Avenue. We talked about this in work session. Anyone have any questions or concerns? Need a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
second,
Augie call.
Trustees Young,
Yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
yes,
the four,
yes,
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Holston Avenue, resolution authorizing engineer design and service for Holston Avenue reconstruction. Jerry or Dan, what do you want to speak briefly to this?
Mayor, this is engineering design services for almost 1 mile of Holsted Avenue from Mamaroneck Avenue to the Harrison line. Full width and full depth restoration, as well as all of the required by law improvements, such as handicap accessible ADA ramps and other items that may come up along the sidewalks and curb.
Just for a little history, there used to be a trolley that ran that street, and the trolley obviously stopped service before most of us were born, and they just buried the tracks. Now we're paying the price. And this used to be a county road, and the village took it over during some program that the county had. And I think the county got the better of us on this too.
Yep.
That was the infamous, famous Larry Schwartz. May the Schwartz be with you. So I need a motion.
I'll make the motion. Len had his hand up, but he's off the call. So, oh no, Glenn, he's back. Okay. He had his hand.
Glenn, you want to say something about this?
Yeah, as they're looking to redesign the road, we have one minor problem that starts one space in on Ward. We have an outflow from one of the buildings in the back there that has caused a continual stream of water that goes from Ward Avenue all the way down Halsted Avenue to the drain by Mamaroneck Avenue. In fact, when it got cold recently, we've had to put up police tape and we've had to load the sidewalk, even where the sidewalk is cut for the handicap at the crosswalk directly across from the train station. This has been going on for years and years. Every time it gets freezing out, there is nothing but ice from that first space on Ward Avenue all the way down the street on Holston Avenue until the drain. It's not a leak. Waterworks dug it up. It's not a leak there. They're telling me that there's an outflow pipe somewhere that's putting the water directly on Halsted Avenue. If we're doing Halsted Avenue anyway, this probably should be solved as part of the overall engineering of Halsted Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. That's a good point.
Thank you.
I made the motion.
Before you do the motion, do we have an update that, because I know we brought this to the building department's attention.
No, we didn't talk about it. I was at the building department today. I'm there all day tomorrow. I'll talk to Frank about it.
Yeah, I sent pictures during the freeze of the water actually coming
Okay.
of the sidewalk that is tied to a downspout, but it's unclear whether it's coming from the roof in an outlet up there or an outlet down below that's from the first floor.
When did you send it? Last week or over the weekend?
No, I sent it weeks ago.
Okay.
When we had the real cold weather.
Okay, we'll catch up to it.
Frozen.
Yep.
I sent it to you and I sent it to Dan.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I made the motion.
Second.
Okay,
Call.
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
trustee Tofor,
Victor?
Trustee DeFour,
Mayor
didn't vote.
Murphy.
I vote yes.
Tom, I just want to compliment the manager on getting, by bidding out the professional services and getting a significant savings.
Thank you, sir.
Resolution to execute a grant agreement to develop an open space acquisition plan under the Hazard Mitigation Assistance Building Resistant Infrastructure Community Grant Program. Dan, can you give us a real quick? You're muted, Dan.
Sure. This is a grant that we applied for in 2020 to conduct an open space acquisition study to protect and hopefully expand some buffers between the Sheldrake River and lands in the industrial area.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or concerns? Okay, someone will make a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second,
Paul.
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez.
Yeah.
Trustee Lucas,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Resolution, home rule request for special legislation to extend a hotel tax in the village of Mamanic in support of bills A 9110 S 8045. The village of Mamanic receives revenue from the two motels located in the community. We get 3% tax, comes to about $20,000 a year, and every little bit helps. So this gives us the opportunity to keep collecting that. I'll make the motion.
Second,
Augustino?
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
yes,
Lucas,
yes,
Tefor,
Four's not here.
Come on.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. Item 4K, resolution authorization to purchase a Mac LR64R day cab chassis with a Leach model. This is a garbage truck. Yeah, he just couldn't put garbage truck. Is $312,745.80. It's a very long lead time, about a year and a half, because of holdups in supply. So we need to order it now to get it, and it's replacing a very old truck. And we've had some problems with our trucks. A lot of them had water damage. So consequently, they have been out for repair and constantly need work. So this is a much needed vehicle to the sanitation fleet. Any questions or concerns from the board?
No.
Yes, Glenn.
Yes, I see that our lead time in ordering this type of equipment is now extraordinarily long. If they wish, Jerry, Dan, any heads of the departments might want to look at equipment that normally they might not be planning to get for 2 years. You wouldn't order until next year. You might want to move up the ordering process 6 or 8 months, because they're not going to see the product for 2 years. That way you can get back on your normal schedule for vehicles. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. I need a motion to buy the truck.
So moved,
second,
Augustino.
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
yes,
Lucas,
yes,
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. And trustee Tefor is left of the game. All right. The next up is 4L. Funding authorization to make repairs at 169 Mount Pleasant Avenue to fix emergency conditions. 169 Mount Pleasant Avenue is actually, it's on Prospect Avenue. That's just the address. It is the old village hall where the police department is, the court is, the building department is, and it is in an abysmal state of disrepair. It needs work. It needed work 30 years ago, and now it's on life support, and we really have to take corrective action. Our employees are working under conditions that they don't deserve. Even prisoners who are arrested for crimes but still not convicted are being held in conditions that are deplorable, and we have to do something about it post haste. I commend the village manager for taking an emergency action on this. It has to happen. The grand total for the base work is $303,200. The alternate work is 1.7 million and change. I hate to just drop a big bill like this on people, but it has a 20% contingency. But there's a lot of work that's been put off for generations, and I have some blame in this too, because I started serving on this board 20 years ago, and it's one of those things that it's not an attractive cost to take in, because it doesn't bring anybody any joy, but it has to happen. And I apologize that it hadn't happened in the time that I've spent on the board before, but I'm glad it's happening now. Yes, Glenn, you have your hand up again?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, I have brought this subject up in numerous times not only over the last months about the initial emergency that Jerry put in like in June, but for 30 years. I realize at this point, you're stuck. You gotta pay the over $300,000. My worry is the other 1.7 million. According to our schedule at this point, we're supposed to have an architectural review of that building, and we're supposed to be rebuilding that building next year at a cost of approximately $12 to $15 million. We can do all this work. Let me finish, Tom. We can do all this work, but you still have to address the work inside. And at a certain point, you have to become ADA compliant. You can't fix 40% of the building. You do that, you become ADA compliant. You have to put in an elevator. There isn't a hallway in that building that is ADA compliant. There isn't a doorway in that building that's ADA compliant. There isn't an office in that building that's ADA compliant. So I have no problems fixing the building, putting the money in and fixing the building. It should have been done months and months ago, and I kept bringing it up. But you just can't say, well, we'll fix this and then we're going to fix that. You'll be spending more money fixing that building, and eventually it's still not, it doesn't serve our purposes. It's too small. The courtroom is too small. The locker rooms that the police officers use are subpar. The space for lawyers and everything to make things. We have staff over at the Regatta that if you had your druthers, they should all be in one building. We have storage we're spending $40,000 a year for over at Halsted Avenue. I think that do the repairs, but immediately put a plan together of either building a brand new village hall or being able to, within 2 years, move your staff out of this village hall, tear it down, and build it up right. You can keep the facade, you can keep that, but you have a lot of needs that this village hall currently isn't doing, and just piecemeal fixing it is not going to solve the problem. And at a certain point, ADA comes in and says, hey, you've done 40% of this building. You have to be compliant now.
You're right.
No elevators, small hallways, narrow hallways, small offices.
Yes, you made that point. I understand. And if you remember, years back, I made the suggestion that we knock it down and build what we need there. And I didn't have the support, but we should have taken remedial action at that time. But nothing that you said is wrong. But we are where we are today. Yes, Trustee Natchez.
Okay. We have two things that are combined into one. One is the emergency work, and one is other work that is absolutely needed. And I have no problems with both, but I would hope on the non-emergency work, we try and bid it out, because there were questions that were raised in previous contracts that really the contracts were more open-ended than really the way that might be more appropriate for the village. And we just asked that, staff and Jerry use their, their approaches and professionalism to try and see if anything can be done that would be more helpful and cost-wise and still get the job done timely.
This is for an emergency conditions, and that's the resolution in front of us today.
Resolution.
Jerry, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Mayor, there's a couple of things that Glenn said that were a little off in the fact that that 13 million in the capital budget is for a new building to be built potentially behind and to the side of the existing building. We never had intention of knocking down the current building 169. What we're going to do is utilize it and continue to have offices in there and the police department until the new building was built. Then we were going to move out and create community spaces and other uses from that building. All of this work, including many of the alternates, is to seal up the building. It's to make sure that we turn a building that has become a sponge now into a solid, secure, watertight building, which will preserve the building forever so that we can continue to potentially move towards our plan of creating a new village hall around this building and then converting the interior to something that would be more community friendly as opposed to just offices. So
Right.
Glenn was a little off on that.
Yes, so in Glenn's defense, at one point, and this was before Jerry, before, I think the only person on the board was Victor and Nora and I, and it was Leon and Keith Waite.
Uh-huh.
We had the discussion, and I did talk about just tearing down that building.
Okay,
So I understand where he got his confusion from.
okay.
Yes, Dan?
Just a correction, Tom, this is for the entire amount, both the emergency work
Yeah, I know it is.
and other desired work. So it's divided into two, and my comments were divided into two. I thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution in front of us.
Second,
Second,
Call the roll.
Trustees Young,
yes.
Natchez,
Yes.
Lucas,
yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Aye. All right. Oh, that's for the agenda.
We got through the agenda?
Well, so far.
Oh, okay.
Second round of comments to the board. Okay, all right.
Glenn,
Yes.
Oh.
Just a couple of things. Dan, you did a really nice job in the absence of Jerry and the suspenders. We might have to go with the term dapper for you, buddy. Jerry, welcome back. COVID was tough. I had it, late December, early January. I'm glad that you're feeling better.
Worst. It was the worst.
And finally, in the spirit of Valentine's Day, if you go to GoFundMe online, there are a couple of hundred Mamanic residents or businesses that have different GoFundMes that, if you so choose, you can help support businesses and residents of the village of Mamanic. Some of them have to do with the cost of college. Some of them have to do with medical. Some of them have to do with trying to put their lives back together from flooding, both residential and commercial. We're a very generous village, and please feel free, go to the GoFundMe page. Let citizens help citizens. Have a good night.
Report from the village manager.
Mayor, I have a report that I want to address the village employees, if I may.
Please do.
In the last few weeks, while I recovered from COVID, it's been on my mind to utilize my time during my village manager's report at the BOT meetings to thank you for all you did last year. I know I sent out a few emails thanking everyone already, but I want the public to know how much of an effective and caring team we are. I received several emails in the last month that I wanted to read tonight because we're all in this together. I'll try to get through this. Never did I expect to take on a new dream job and have to improve and pave $3.6 million worth of roads, or start a $5.5 million sewer remediation project under a court order, or drive a recovery effort from a tropical storm that knocked out 4,500 village electric customers. 50% of our village was without electricity during SIES. Deal with an almost 2-year global pandemic, trying to keep staff and their families as safe as possible, while working in the community and distributing over 40,000 masks, as well as the rescue and recovery of village residents and businesses from the worst flood in our history, impacting over 30% of our village, causing us, our village government, over 19 million in damage and cost reimbursements. When people tell me that I'm the best village manager we've ever had, I tell them, in fact, that I'm the luckiest village manager because I was privileged to adopt and hire some of you to build a strong municipal team. If I am the best, it's only because of you, the employees. There's no doubt in my mind. Thank you all again. As I read these, please remember, we all share in the thanks and praise from these very respected community leaders. This email is from Durandi Martinez, the Executive Director from the Community Resource Center. Dear Jerry, I've been meaning to write to you for a while now. After everything that happened with the flood and the way you've handled this situation in the months after, we at the CRC really felt supported by you. The reason we can pump out all of those feet of water in the flats area and in our building is because you made sure to send support and continuously checked on all of us. Members of my team are grateful for your leadership. All I can think about is what a great decision our village trustees made hiring you. Not only were you everywhere, but we felt strongly that you understood every community member in this village. Your humility with our client members we serve is what is most important to us. The feeling of empathy and belonging is truly felt by everyone under your management in the village. For this, your unyielding hard work since the very first day you started, and for every single time you stopped on your way around the village, we thank you. This letter or this email is from Malcolm Froman, former Village of Larchmont trustee and the director of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Hunger Task Force. Dear Jerry, now that the Larchmont Mamaroneck Hunger Task Force has completely moved to the new permanent home at 955 Mamaroneck Avenue, I'd like to express my gratitude for all the thoughtful and reliable support you gave us during our existence. Whenever we needed assistance, you were available to quickly provide a solution. As you know, the pandemic forced us to suspend our food distribution at the Community Resource Center in March of 2020 in order to ensure the health and safety of clients and volunteers. After opening for 4 months out of the Mamaroneck Avenue School parking lot, the start of reopening the schools in August meant we had to leave. Fortunately, you and Tom came to our rescue, giving us the exclusive use of the commuter parking adjacent to Columbus Park. Two outdoor locations presented us with numerous challenges, especially severe weather and a historic flood. But thanks to your commitment to make the resources of the village available to assist us when we needed help, we were able to focus on our mission, providing food assistance for hundreds of struggling Mamaroneck families. Thanks to you, I've gotten to know many of Mamaroneck's key personnel, Chief Sandra DeRussa, and before her, Chris Leahy, Building Inspector Frank Tavolaki, General Foreman Tony Accavelli, and Recreation Supervisor Jason Pinto, among others. Each of them has provided the Hunger Task Force with invaluable assistance. Jerry, as you know, I was a trustee of the Village of Larchmont for 5 years. During that time, I became keenly aware of the critical role of a village manager in Larchmont. It's a village administrator, plays to providing a reliable, safe, and pleasant environment. The residents of the village are in good hands. On behalf of the many volunteers, and especially the hundreds of families we serve, we want to thank you for your unwavering support. And Mayor, this last email is from Margaret Calford, President of the STEM Alliance and a Village of Mamaroneck resident. Dear Jerry, it was great to see you at the Westchester Assembly Delegates State Budget hearing last week. You were one of only a handful of local administrators who came to this important event to represent the financial needs of our community. You were extremely eloquent, I was surprised at that too, and clear about the critical need for the financial support in the areas of affordable housing in the county overall, but more specifically here in the Village of Mamaroneck. You made it clear that the diversity that defines us here in the Village of Mamaroneck is at risk, and that the lives of our residents will be impacted if state-level leadership does not identify and assist with the organizationalism of available funding. The delegates were impressed and asked you to collaborate with the leaders other leaders from the small municipalities to help clarify the path that is needed to assist local communities and localities such as ours. With your natural, let's get it done together approach, you immediately agreed. Watching you speak with passion and authenticity, as well as the clear knowledge of how to level available resources for the goods of the residents, I was immediately reminded of your 24/7 response to the flooding crisis in September 2021. Jerry, I'm not certain enough of us have thanked you for your exceptional dedication to our community, but you gave us so much more than overtime hours in September, although you certainly gave us plenty of those as well. You combined compassion with managerial skills, governmental knowledge of law and policy, as well as respectful engagement of the local volunteers and nonprofit groups to craft evolving solutions for each stage of the disaster. This was not just about the initial days when people needed help the most. You have been dedicated for months after the disaster and recovery needs. Your skills are exceptional, and this cannot be understated. Thank you for your commitment to the Village of Mamaroneck. We're a better place thanks to your leadership now and in the future. So Mayor, all of those letters are extremely heartwarming and humbling, but they are letters not just to Jerry, but they are letters to the village employees as a whole. None of the stuff that I do could I do alone, none of it. And every single department head, as well as every single employee, are always available for me to be able to do some of the things that these well-respected leaders in our community describe in their letters. So I appreciate the time that you've afforded me this evening, and I want to thank you. I have 3 items that are for the record. I can't remember what they are. Let me look them up. Sport time contract. Yeah. We got the trees and the Millennium Strategies. Thank you very much for your time.
Jerry, thank you for sharing those letters. I enjoyed reading them when I came in. How you can assess people is how they behave under moments of extreme stress and extreme danger. And I have watched you up close in many of those situations. And while the employees certainly deserve a ton of respect and gratitude,
Yeah.
You were the quarterback of the team. And no team wins without a quarterback who can call the plays. And you did that magnificently when the chips were down. And I think I spent 12 straight days with you after the flood.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Village of Mamanic in Toto's finest hour. And I think that all 3 of those well-respected community members recognize that too. And you've seen tonight, there's 2 sides of the coin, and I'm constantly reminded in public service of the poem by Rudyard Kipling called "If," where you assess both sides of the coin. And I think if you read it, it's a good thing for every elected or appointed person who serves in government to read and understand, because it's about how you deal with adversity. So thank you, and thank our employees for a magnificent job in times of extreme stress.
Thank you, and thank them. They're awesome.
Okay, Jerry, next up is the ever popular and great employee also, Mr. Fusco.
Yeah.
Please be advised, there'll be a taxing sale on March 9th, 2022 at 10 a.m. in the courtroom at 169 Mount Pleasant Avenue. That is all, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Now a report from the ex-appellate judge, Mr. Spolzino, who we're lucky to have.
Thank you, Mayor. My report is only that local law 1 of 2022, which was the local law establishing the special floods hazard areas, was filed and became effective on January 24th.
Minutes, commissions, boards, and committees, minutes of the Board of Trustees work session and regular meeting of January 24th, 2022. Minutes of the Budget Committee meeting of January 5th, 2022. Minutes of the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee meeting of October 26th, 2021. Minutes of the Planning Board meeting of December 22nd, 2021. Minutes of the Tree Committee meeting of December 9th, 2021. Minutes of the Committee for the Environment meeting of December 21st, 2021. Minutes of the Art Council meeting of January 4th, 2022. Before we adjourn tonight, I just want to reiterate that I hope everybody has a great Valentine's Day. You might see here on the table arrayed 24 beautiful roses. That was a gift to the mayor. The first time the mayor has ever received flowers from anyone in his life. And I want to thank the lovely Joe Jason for sending them to me. You made my day, sweetheart. I appreciate it. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of saying good night?
Good night.
Night.